What's up, everybody? So I received a request a bit ago to talk about the Traitor Legion Loyalists, what their deal is, what's their status, and all that. And I had to think for a good amount of time on this one because I had to figure out how I wanted to ramble about it. And I brought it down to two videos. I'm going to do two videos. It's going to be a two-parter. Part one, this part is going to give some basic things to consider when thinking about Traitor Legion Loyalists on your own, and also bringing up some things in regard to the novel series and Forge books. And the second part of part one in this video, so still in this video, I'm going to go over the Istvaan 3 betrayal. The first real sight, you could say, of the Horus Heresy starting proper, the first real battle of the Horus Heresy, the first real account of Traitor versus Loyalist. Part 2, I'm going to do a brief overview of 4 characters from the Istvaan 3 betrayal, or that were present at the Istvaan 3 betrayal. It's going to be a brief overview of each character, their name, what legion they're from, some summary stuff about them, their status, and any key points to know. So that's the way I'm going to talk about some Traitor Legion Loyalist stuff. And from there, if there are requests or questions, I can do my best to address them, maybe in a more in-depth series of videos to answer specific requests. So, with that said, some things to keep in mind about Traitor Legion Loyalists, and really, you could also use this by extension to keep in mind of all the legions. And the first thing is they're massive. In comparison to a chapter or a warband, they are absolutely huge. This means we don't have exact numbers pinned down. This means it's kind of an amorphous blob that you can pluck from and do whatever you want with for any legion. You want to have an Iron Warriors legionary force, strike force that's fast hitting with bikes and fast moving, as opposed to the standard wall of bullets. That can actually work in the Legion setup. You want to have White Scars hitting hard with Terminators only, or Raven Guard doing the same thing. It works in the Legion setup. So that's just the very nature of the legions in general. Now, post Istvaan 5 Job Site Massacre may switch up some things for particular legions, but just in generic, legions are big enough you can do whatever you want with. And just keep that in mind as I go over this overview. So with the Traitor Legions, they are a legion, well, they are half the legions, and they are massive as well. So from that size, of which we have some accurate estimations for some of the legions, and other legions we just have no idea. From that amorphous size, we don't know the exact number of the Traitor Legion members who remain loyal to the Emperor. So we don't know exactly how many Traitor Legion loyalists there were at the very onset of the heresy. From that, we don't know how many survived the different purgings, because the Primarchs knew that it wouldn't be 100% turnover rate when they break away from the Emperor, so they had to be careful about and do some reconnaissance on their own and figure out who would remain loyal to them, who could they trust to stick around and fight on, and who would they have to get rid of. Once they figured that out to the best of their ability, and it wasn't 100% successful on that road either, but once they figured it out, the legions conducted different types of purgings. The Istvaan 3 betrayal is one such example. So, from those purgings, we don't know how many loyalists survived the purgings. To compound this issue, we have the issue that the legions rarely gather at 100% strength when they muster. They try to, but there are things that make that difficult. They could be stuck in, an element could be stuck in battle somewhere. They can't just leave. They have to finish the battle first. You could have an element that's far too far away to muster in time for the timetable of the campaign at hand, whatever it is, so they're not going to wait the extra however many weeks, months, or even a year or so for those elements to get there. They're just going to move on, and those elements maybe will eventually link up or do other stuff. And then you may have other reasons that a legion's force can't muster. They are the occupying force for a legion outpost, a legion fortress, whatever it is. So we have these pockets scattered throughout the galaxy from all the legions, not just the Traitor Legion, that are kind of isolated. And for the Traitor Legions, some of those pockets could be Loyalists, and they survive by the sheer chance of not being present for the purging. So you have all that to consider. And with that said, keeping in mind what I said earlier, that you could pluck and do whatever you want with the different legions, the writers do this as well for their novels or for Forge World's fluff stuff. And that's completely 100% A-okay in my book. I think that's great. What it means is, outside of some intrinsic characters, we don't really have a set number to work with. So if they want to make up a character or so on, they can for their purposes. And as players, we can do the same thing for our collecting. So you basically have 3 levels of loyalists from the Traitor Legions. You have the individual, and you see this in character-driven stories, where it's really just character development for them. And either they're on their own, or they don't know who to trust, and they're doing the best they can. From there, you have squad or squadron-based stuff. Maybe it's a squadron of vehicles. Maybe it's a independent character type, an HQ type, like one of the characters, with a support staff. Who knows? All we know is that it's basically around a squad size. We have examples of this in the writings as well. And lastly, the rarest is what I call full-on armyless status, meaning it's a battle group, it's a fortress defense force, whatever it is. It's a full-on force that you could collect and represent with a full-on army list, no problem. That is all loyalist. And with that, you have examples of this in the writings as well. And because it's an amorphous blob of Traitor Legion loyalist survivors, you can pick and choose as the need suits you. You know? So, if you want to collect Iron Warrior loyalists, there's examples of that, and even if there weren't, just by the very nature of what I just mentioned, you could do that and you wouldn't necessarily be quote-unquote wrong. So just keep that in mind if you want to go ahead and collect a loyalist force from a Traitor Legion on your own. But all of this leads to the problem of not really knowing exact numbers, and some people like to be accurate as possible, and there's really no way to be accurate here, so that could really be a negative thing for some players. But I look at it as a positive. It means whatever you want to do, that's great. Go for it. So from there, let's look at the Istvaan 3 betrayal. This is the site of a purging, the site of the heresy starting proper, and an important thing to look at when talking about Traitor Legion loyalists. Some of the more pivotal characters come from the Istvaan 3 betrayal, in the novel series, for example. So, with that said, we have some things to keep in mind. At this time, Horus is War Master. You know, given that title by the Emperor himself, and trusted with the Great Crusade by the Emperor himself. So his orders are not questioned, and his reasonings for things are accepted. There's no reason to doubt him. From that, you have the Istvaan planet going renegade from the fledgling Imperium, and Horus has to deal with this. At this time, Horus is ready to throw off the cloak of loyalty and reveal himself with the true nature, as are the legions he was able to gather to his side. And specifically, he gathers 3 to his side for the Istvaan 3 situation, so we have 4 legions total that are present there: the Sons of Horus, Death Guard, Emperor's Children, and World Leaders. Now, a quick side note. These legions have been concocting their plans for a while now. It wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment thing. And the first Traitor Legion amongst all of them is the Wordbearers Legion. You can kind of say it's their fault. But it's called the Horus Heresy, and it doesn't really start proper, in my opinion, until this moment. So, what we have here on the outside, what the fledgling Imperium sees, is Horus wants to do a display of overwhelming brute force to intimidate any other governors who may be thinking about seceding to not even try it. So it's a huge strength of force in that area, but Horus was given this position by the Emperor himself. It makes sense what he's doing. Nobody has reasons to question it. In reality, this is the perfect opportunity for these 4 legions to conduct their purge of the loyalists in their ranks that they were able to figure out, because they're not able to figure out necessarily at a 100% success rate. So not having that success rate means you're going to have survivors by proxy. Now the idea is to attack the planet, Istvaan 3, with a 4 Legion combined force. An overwhelming number of firepower and just power in general is going to attack this planet. But the catch is, it's all going to be Loyalist forces attacking the planet from the 4 different legions. So they do just that. And their reward for a successful campaign, you could say, is death from above. Orbital bombardment of the planet. Which would have wiped them out if they did not get advance warning from one of the Loyalists that was still with the fleet. He was able to make it to the planet side, give them enough advance warning that the vast majority of the Loyalist forces survived the bombardment. Yeah, they're worse for wear, and they did take casualties, but they survived the bombardment. When this is figured out, the World Leaders Primarch goes into a rage and personally leads an assault force on the planet to wipe them out. The other 3 legions kind of begrudgingly follow suit, with Mortarion as well taken to the field of battle. So you have 2 Primarchs and 4 different legions attacking with fresh troops. So the Traitors have 2 Primarchs on their side, numbers on their side, and being fresh troops on their side. Kind of a one-sided battle for the Loyalists. But this marks, you could say, the first real battle of Loyalist versus Traitor. So what you have is a Loyalist holding out as best they can, but being beaten back. And when they're essentially broken as a force, the Traitors withdraw as the planet is being bombarded for a second time. So between the 2 bombardments and the attack from the Traitors, what you have is either everybody's wiped out, or anybody that survives is in no shape to fight back and probably can't get off the planet. And the end result is, those 4 legions, the Sons of Horus, Death Guard, Emperor's Children, and World Leaders, have essentially purged their ranks. And it's pretty successful. It's not 100% success, because one of the frigates of the fleet that was there, a Death Guard frigate, the Eisenstein, was able to break away from the fleet and flee, and give advance warning to the fledgling Imperium. So, if it was 100% success rate, nobody outside of that system would know what happened, and it would be even more of a surprise. But a frigate was able to get away and bring advance warning to the fledgling Imperium, but Horus did calculate that into his plans a bit, as you saw with the Istvaan 5 drop site massacre. So, at the end of the day, a very successful purging for the Traitor legions. Not only did they basically get rid of any Loyalists within their ranks for the most part, but it also made them a bit more battle-hardened against fighting Space Marines, which is something that really, for the most part, outside of the potential of the Space Wolves attacking one of the Lost Legions by the order of the Emperor, I should say, by the Emperor's order, aside from that whole kind of fuzzy situation, Space Marine versus Space Marine was something really never even factored into a lot of training or situational strategizing. So these 4 legions were able to kind of develop that a bit more and have that leg up when fighting against their Loyalist brethren from the other legions. So on top of that, if they were able to cut down those they once stood shoulder to shoulder with during the Great Crusade, then they're going to have even less of a difficult time cutting down other legions. So it helps battle harden their force a bit. Anyways, that's the Istvaan 3 Betrayal, and that's a little bit of an overview on the idea of Traitor Legion Loyalists. So in part 2, I will be going over 4 specific characters from the Istvaan 3 Betrayal situation in a generalistic manner. So hopefully this was interesting, hopefully it helped some people out, and thanks for sticking through it, and until next time, take it easy.